Okay, welcome students. This is Flipped Classroom Geography. We're in Chapter 11, Western Europe. We are expanding our knowledge of countries and cultures, and now we're in the Eastern Hemisphere. The objectives for this section are to locate the countries of Western Europe, locate the major geographic features as well as the major industries, and finally we're going to explain the causes of conflict in Northern Ireland. Just to give you some background knowledge of the physical and human aspects of this particular continent, when we were in North America, we were studying deserts like the Chihuahuan Desert, the Mojave, the Sonoran. Europe is the only continent in the world without any deserts at all. It's also known as a peninsula of peninsulas because the continent itself is a peninsula, but from there you can break it down into smaller ones. Europe also has a very unique Christian heritage. This area has been heavily influenced by the Bible, but you're going to see a pattern where Christianity is actually on the decline. And then finally, the North Atlantic Drift is warming most of Northern Europe to keep it ice-free. So when you look at where Europe is located on a map, it's so far north of the equator, you would think it would be covered in snow and ice. But thanks to that warm current coming from Canada, it keeps the area ice-free. Before we can move on, let's clear up some very confusing terms. I know you've heard these before. England, Great Britain, the UK, and some others. What is the difference between all these names? So I recommend you take detailed notes on this and even go back and replay it a couple times, because once we clear up the difference between all these terms, it makes the chapter a lot easier to understand. We will be using all of these terms in class as well. So to start with the broadest term, the British Commonwealth. The British Commonwealth are countries that were for the most part former British colonies. So what you're looking at on this map, everything highlighted in blue, that's part of the Commonwealth. So for example, looking over here at the Western Hemisphere, we can see Canada is highlighted in blue. We know that the head of Canada is Queen Elizabeth II. Looking down here northeast of Mexico, there's a tiny little country here. Remember when the Spaniards were coming over and conquering, the Spanish didn't want that particular country. Can you guess what country it is? That one's also part of the Commonwealth. So again, it's former British colonies for the most part, and the head of the Commonwealth is Queen Elizabeth II. From there, we can zoom in to just Europe itself, and what's highlighted in green are known as the British Isles. The British Isles are a group of islands off the mainland of Europe. It looks like two major islands, but really there's a lot of smaller ones as well. From there, let's look at the larger island. That one is known as Great Britain. So Great Britain is the larger island. The smaller island is actually called Ireland. Okay, from Great Britain, we can zoom in even further, and you can see that it's made up of three different nations: Scotland, England, and Wales. So England is a nation located on the island of Great Britain. From there, the United Kingdom includes Scotland, England, Wales, but it also includes one more nation, and that is Northern Ireland. Those four nations together make up the UK. Now, Northern Ireland is on the island of Ireland, and then to the south of that, you also have another country, and the official name of it is the Republic of Ireland. Many times people just refer to it as Ireland, but the Republic of is the official name, okay? Because the island itself, the whole thing is called Ireland. Politically, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland are very two different things, so please don't confuse those two. As we look at the UK, we know that Great Britain is the largest island in Europe. To the south of it, you have a very narrow body of water known as the English Channel. And here's a little fun fact for you. If you know your history regarding the English and the French, they kind of dislike each other. And so when you look at any map here in the US or really anywhere in the Western Hemisphere, we refer to this body of water as the English Channel. However, if ever you find yourself in France, pick up a local map. Because they dislike the English, they don't want to give them the privilege of having the English name for that body of water. So the French refer to that narrow body of water as La Manche. And if anyone has some French lessons, you can tell me what that means. Now, looking at the individual nations, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, starting with England. It is the largest division within the entire UK. It's also the most secular. Only about 6% of people practice any form of Christianity. There are 4 distinct geographic features that you can see in England. One of them are called downs. These are chalky hills that cannot support any trees. The reason being is because the tree's root system really can't hold on to a chalky soil, and so you only see grasses at the top of there. Another feature are the Pennines. This is a mountain system that runs along the backbone of England, and it kind of looks like the spine of England, so the Pennines are often referred to as the backbone. Another feature is the moor. These are wastelands that are really high on treeless plateaus. Again, the soil is not very fertile here, so the largest type of vegetation you'll see are really short shrubs. And then finally, you have the River Thames. This one is almost at the center of England. And then on this river, you have the largest city in England, and that is London. And again, remember in geography, we always want to ask the why. Why would you find major cities along the river systems? Moving on to the other 3 nations, you have Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. For Wales, the climate here is pretty mild and wet. It is mountainous. The capital in Wales is Cardiff. You do see a lot of cattle and sheep grazing within this area, especially in the treeless areas as well, the plateaus there. For Scotland, 2 geographic features you need to know are glens and lochs. Both of these are carved by glaciers. However, glens are very narrow valleys and lochs are deep, narrow lakes. In a couple more slides, I'm going to tell you too the difference between the Scottish and the Irish. I won't get too deep into the background of that as far as history goes, but I'll just share with you some fun facts about the Scottish versus Irish. Okay. For the final nation, Northern Ireland, here you can find plentiful lakes and rivers. You also find the capital, Belfast. Belfast is pretty famous for the history in regards to shipbuilding. They have many shipyards where they would build famous warships. Probably one of the most famous ships ever built at Belfast was the Titanic. Now, a fun fact regarding the Scottish and the Irish. I love culture. I love the human aspects of geography, and so I especially love to hear different languages and dialects. Now, whenever you hear someone speaking in an accent, you never know if it's a Scottish or an Irish accent. So here's a little fun fact for you. The Scottish accent is very what I like to call rough around the edges. They do a lot of ugh when they talk. So I like to think of the movie Brave, the Disney movie. If you hear her speaking, especially her parents, that very thick, rough accent, that is a Scottish. The Irish, however, have more of like a melody in the way they talk. It almost sounds like a little song when they speak. So that's the difference between the two. Now, the Republic of Ireland. This country is located on the island of Ireland, remember. It's to the south of Northern Ireland. For the Republic here, about 87% of the people are Roman Catholic, so far more than you would see within the nations of the UK. The soil here is also very thin and rocky. And they also have a warm climate because of that North Atlantic drift. So because of that, it's constantly warm, consistently humid, and almost always overcast. The capital for Republic of Ireland is Dublin. Now, shifting over to the Scandinavian Peninsula. This area includes 5 countries: Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Iceland. Remember I told you Europe is often referred to as a peninsula within a peninsula. So here's an example of one of those smaller peninsulas. Um, Another fun fact for you regarding names within this area. Um, Many times, especially here in the Western Hemisphere, when a girl marries, she takes on her husband's last name. That's not the case within this region here. If a husband and wife were to have a child and the child was a boy, he would take on his dad's first name as well as the name son as his new last name. If the same couple had a daughter, she would take her dad's first name as well as the word daughter at the end of that. So, for example, for myself, my dad's name is James, so I would be Amanda James' daughter. So you can have some fun with that. Find out what your Scandinavian name would be. So when you hear names like Jameson, Johnson, Harrison, if you have any of those names in your family tree, you could probably chase your roots back to some type of Scandinavian heritage. So kind of fun fact. Starting off with Norway. Norway has many fjords. We learned about what those were when we were talking about Canada. They have a lot of small islands. Skiing is their national sport. The shore of Norway stretches over 15,000 miles, which is more than half the circumference of the earth. So huge country. Oslo is the capital. And for this country, you'll also see a lot of service industries. A lot of oil exports have made this country very rich, and they have one of the highest standards of living in Europe. Your next country is Sweden. It's the leading producer of mixed grains. Stockholm is the capital. Sweden is also known for having a reputation for very quality, high-tech engineering. So they're known for that. It has also helped make this country pretty wealthy. They have also one of the highest life expectancies in the world. For Finland, you'll see some famous Laplanders here, or they're often referred to as just Laps. These are people that tend and herd reindeer, so in the colder months, they'll herd the reindeer further south, and then when the months start to warm up again, they'll take the reindeer back up north. The Finnish language is believed to be the hardest in the world. So when you hear languages, especially Asian languages, you know, some people think Mandarin is very difficult to learn. Finnish is supposed to be the most difficult in the world. For Denmark, they depend a lot on agriculture and trade. They have one of the highest tax rates in the world. Why? Well, because Denmark believes in a welfare system. They have a lot of welfare programs, and so who ends up paying for all that? The citizens of the country. So they do have one of the highest tax rates in the world. The capital is Copenhagen. Where have you heard that before, if you have at all? And then finally, Denmark used to own many overseas territories. Two of the most famous ones were Iceland and Greenland. They eventually allowed Iceland to gain their independence. However, they still have control of Greenland. So, a fact for you, Greenland is not an independent country. Denmark is in control of that. And Greenland is the largest island in the world. And your last country is going to be Iceland. Iceland is known as the land of fire and ice because they have many glaciers and they also have a lot of active volcanoes. There are, I believe, over 200 active volcanoes on this country, or I'm sorry, in this country on the island. One of those volcanoes erupts about every 5 years. It's also home to one of the more famous volcanoes known as Mount Hekla. Legend has it that Because this volcano was so active, many believed that this was the very entry into hell. So, Iceland, they're known for their tall tales and their legends. And they also have more hot springs than anywhere else in the world. That concludes our chapter. I hope you enjoyed it.